Picture yourself stepping onto an aircraft. Your parachute could malfunction at any moment. But instead of quiet terror, you and your fellow soldiers break into song. A melody about spilled blood, shattered limbs, and the grim reaper lurking far below. This wasn't insanity. This was ritual. World War II's most chilling ballad existed for one haunting purpose. Paratroopers sang to mock the very doom they faced daily. A young recruit sat strapped into his gear, his harness cut into trembling shoulders, his pulse hammered against the thunderous drone of transport engines. The C-47 carved through pitch-black sky. Infinity stretched in every direction. Someone's voice cut through the mechanical roar. "Is everybody happy?" Dozens of throats bellowed responses. His own reply barely escaped his lips. The red light blazed, then green, one stride forward, then nothing but space. Wind clawed at his falling body. He began his count. 1, 2, 3, 4. He waited for that brutal jerk when silk would bloom overhead. Silence answered him instead. No canopy spread above. Just endless rushing air. The ballad reveals his final moments. Cord lines wrapped his throat like a noose. His backup chute twisted around both legs in deadly knots. Ground raced upward. Merciless, unstoppable. Impact came with shocking violence. Crimson stained the tangled lines. Glory, glory. What a hell of a way to die. A funeral march disguised as defiant laughter. What drove fighting men to embrace such morbid poetry? Why did young warriors charge toward battle while celebrating the horrors that terrified them most? The answer lies buried in history, in America's airborne birth, in the ghostly anthem that soared with them through European skies. Long before this melody echoed inside military transports, before the 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions chanted it against fate itself, an idea took shape. Radical, untested, terrifying. Airborne combat. Sky soldiers. The late 1930s found the world teetering toward unprecedented warfare. Military minds still pictured trenches, massive artillery barrages, tank battalions grinding across muddy battlefields. German and Soviet strategists experimented with revolutionary concepts. Troops delivered from above. America lagged behind this innovation. When European combat erupted in 1939, the United States possessed 0 airborne forces. The vision spread anyway. Elite shock troops could drop behind hostile lines, sever communications, capture bridges, create chaos before main armies arrived. June 1940 brought approval from General George Marshall. Chief of Staff granted authorization. The airborne test platoon emerged from nothing. 50 volunteers, men who'd never seen parachutes outside circus performances. Fort Benning, Georgia became their proving ground. Danger struck immediately. Equipment failed regularly. Static lines snapped without warning. Broken bones became routine. Shattered legs. Wind dragged bodies across rough terrain. The numbers told a brutal story. Every 100 jumps might claim 1 life before facing any enemy. Yet volunteers kept arriving. Young, restless, fearless. They wanted first place in combat, even if it meant leaping into darkness. This crucible forged airborne culture, built on gallows humor. If death was inevitable, better to laugh at it. Better to sing about it than shake in terror. These beginnings carried more than weapons into war. They carried music, a song that whispered their worst nightmares, then transformed them into something they could confront together. Parachutes meant everything to airborne troops, salvation or execution. Every jump started with prayers, ended with relief or catastrophe. From this delicate balance, Blood on the Risers was born. Nobody composed it in offices. No general ordered its creation. It spread like wildfire, passed between barracks, shared across transport planes. The melody borrowed from Battle Hymn of the Republic. But these words dripped differently, with irony, with dread, with dark laughter. The rookie whose equipment fails, static lines that snap, silk that tangles, bodies that plummet, broken against earth. Fort Benning cadets heard it first as cruel humor. Veterans sang it to fresh recruits, watching faces pale as lyrics penetrated. Soon even rookies joined in, shouting choruses with voices that shook less each time. Gallows humor, yes, but also armor. By singing death, they stole its power. By laughing at the worst possibilities, they found courage to board aircraft again, and again, and again. Airborne culture grew through punishing training, through brutal accidents, through a song that transformed tragedy into ceremony. By 1942, entire battalions memorized every verse. As America prepared to unleash paratroopers across European battlefields, the song traveled with them, an anthem of terror, defiance, and destiny. 1943 transformed paratroopers from experiment into weapon, a weapon the Allies planned to hurl deep into occupied Europe's heart. Training had hardened them. Dozens of jumps each, night exercises, combat drops, endless repetition of boarding, buckling, standing, leaping into void. Each man knew procedures by instinct. Each man also knew the risks. Accidents happened constantly. Broken legs, concussions, drownings when chutes failed over water. Blood on the risers evolved beyond entertainment. It became reminder. Every jump might be the last. When the chorus rang through barracks, "Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die," it was half joke, half confession. Deployments began quietly. North Africa, Sicily, Italy. The airborne carved bloody paths across the Mediterranean. Each operation proved the concept, dropping into chaos far from friendly forces, striking where enemies least expected. They paid dearly. Misdrops, scattered units, paratroopers landing in ocean, dragged down by gear. Statistics were unforgiving. By 1944, the ultimate test loomed. Operation Neptune, the airborne assault on Normandy. The night before D-Day, history's largest parachute drop. More than 13,000 paratroopers from the 82nd and 101st Airborne crammed into C-47 transports, engines growling through darkness toward the French coast. The paratroopers sang. Inside those fuselages, men shouted verses of "Blood on the risers" to drown fear. Some laughed. Some clenched jaws in silence. The words became charms against death, mocking fate that might await when green lights blinked. "Is everybody happy?" Men roared back, some voices steady, others cracking. Doors opened. Cold air rushed in, carrying sea salt, fuel fumes, fear itself. Red light glowed, then green. They leaped, one after another, into tracer fire, into storm. The night of June 5th into June 6th was pure chaos. Planes scattered by flak and clouds. Stick after stick of paratroopers dropped miles from targets. Some drowned in flooded fields. Some were gunned down before cutting free from harnesses. Others drifted silently onto rooftops, hedgerows, even into startled German sentries' arms. Everything the song warned about. Parachutes failing, cords tangling, risers tightening around necks. The lyrics were no longer abstract. They were lived reality. Yet amid horror, the mission succeeded. Bridges seized, roads cut, German reinforcements delayed. The price was steep. But invasion forces on beaches survived because the airborne did their job. From Normandy forward, paratrooper legend only grew. Market Garden in Holland, the Ardennes during the bitter Battle of the Bulge Winter. Each campaign etched deeper airborne identity. Fearless, reckless, bonded by a song speaking of death while celebrating courage. Back in the United States, replacements arrived at training camps, learning not only how to pack chutes or fire rifles, but also the words to "Blood on the Risers." It became tradition, a rite of passage. To be airborne meant knowing the song, singing it loudly, as if daring fate to come closer. By 1945's dawn, thousands of men had carried that dark anthem across 2 continents. It followed them into Sicily's rocky fields, Normandy's hedgerows, Holland's canals, Belgium's frozen forests, always there, in barracks, in aircraft, in silence before jumps. The song became inseparable from the airborne itself, not written in official manuals, not sanctioned by generals, but burned into memory by repetition, fear, brotherhood. As war raged toward climax, "Blood on the Risers" was no longer just parody tune. It was America's airborne soundtrack, a hymn of horror, courage, and inevitability. War is cruel. Airborne war is merciless. For men stepping outdoors at 800 feet, no second chances existed. A single mistake, a wind gust, a faulty harness. The story ended exactly as the song foretold. "Blood on the Risers" was not fantasy. It was lived reality. Countless paratroopers met the fate sung in its verses. Some never saw chutes open. Some tangled in telephone wires, strangled before they could cut free. Others slammed into stone walls, rooftops, church steeples at terminal speed. When comrades found them, bodies were twisted, broken, unrecognizable. The song's macabre chorus, "Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die," was not exaggeration. It was reportage set to music. On D-Day, horror unfolded in skies over Normandy. C-47s roared across the French coast. Flak burst everywhere. Pilots swerved. Troopers were flung from doors at wrong moments. Chutes deployed late. Or not at all. Men crashed into flooded fields. Their gear dragged them under. Cries for help were swallowed by night. For many, no rescue came. Survivors remembered hearing the song in their heads as they fell. One 101st Airborne veteran recalled, "We used to sing about the risers. On D-Day I saw them wrapped around a boy's neck. His face was purple. The song wasn't funny anymore." But even when death struck, missions demanded progress. Paratroopers pressed on. They rallied in small groups, fought from hedgerow to hedgerow, carved footholds in France. Tragedy was absorbed, swallowed by war's larger tide. Yet the song never disappeared. It lingered because it spoke truth. Operation Market Garden, September 1944. History's largest airborne assault. Thousands of men dropped across Holland. Once again, green lights flashed. Once again, fate played its cruel game. Chutes opened late. Wind scattered sticks miles from targets. Germans fired from ground, shooting men while they hung in air. The unlucky fell into rivers and canals, struggling against heavy packs until water claimed them. Witnesses described entire sticks wiped out before boots touched soil. One glider pilot later said, "The fields were full of parachutes, some floating, some collapsed, some crimson." Market Garden ended in disaster. The bridge at Arnhem could not be held. The airborne suffered catastrophic losses. "Blood on the Risers," once a barracks chant, sounded like prophecy. Then came the Ardennes. Winter 1944. Snow, ice, German armor punching through thin American lines. The 101st Airborne rushed to Bastogne, exhausted, under-equipped, surrounded. They held. But the cost was brutal. Again, replacements filled ranks. Again, they learned the song. Again, some lived it. frozen parachutes, jumps in blizzards, ground rushing up unseen beneath night's heavy veil. The song was not confined to European theater. In the Pacific, airborne units leaped over Luzon and Leyte. Tropical storms tore apart formations. Chutes failed in torrential rain. Men drowned in rice paddies, or were speared by bamboo forests. The words, "Ain't gonna jump no more," became bitterly literal. Every line of the ballad had its echo in reality. The risers swung around his neck. Yes. The reserve chute tangled in his legs. Yes. The medics rolled up their sleeves and smiled. Yes, because grimly, for them, the dead meant practice, and practice was necessary in war. The song's climax, the final verse where blood, brains, and body parts litter ground, was sung with laughter around campfires and in canteens. But on battlefields, men saw it. Black humor turned to silence. Silence turned to memory. Yet paradoxically, the darker the song, the stronger its grip. Men did not abandon it. They clung to it. Because to sing it was to admit truth. Death was near. To shout it aloud was to rob death of its sting. One 82nd Airborne veteran put it simply, "If you can laugh at the worst thing that can happen, you can face anything." So they sang, in Sicily, in Normandy, in Holland, in the Ardennes, in Pacific jungles. Even as comrades fell in precisely the manner the song described, the chorus thundered on. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more. It was their fear's anthem, their courage's soundtrack. The tragedy at its core was not just one man's fall, it was thousands' collective fate. Every trooper knew he might be next. The climax of Blood on the Risers was not sung in theaters or parades. It was lived in muddy fields, in shattered towns, in skies over a world at war. Each verse was etched in blood. The final chorus was always the same. For some, it ended in laughter, for others in silence, but for all, it was truth. When guns finally fell silent in 1945, airborne survivors carried more than battle scars. They carried memories of friends lost, of nights in the sky, of a song that had followed them everywhere. The immediate aftermath was heavy with grief. In Normandy alone, more than 2,000 paratroopers never returned. Market Garden cost thousands more. The Battle of the Bulge left entire companies shattered. For every casualty report printed in cold numbers, there were men who could recall a face, a laugh, a verse of Blood on the Risers, sung hours before that comrade vanished forever. Medics and officers spoke of the same grim reality. For every operation, accidents claimed lives before single shots were fired. In training fields across England and France, men fell to earth as the song predicted. Statistics, once whispered, were undeniable. Airborne units paid not only in combat, but in preparation. The press, when reporting on paratroopers, chose different tones. They spoke of courage, daring, innovation. They showed photographs of young men smiling, standing proudly in jump gear. The reality that many were killed by faulty chutes or tangled lines was rarely highlighted. The myth of invincibility was preserved for morale. Yet inside the ranks, truth was never hidden. The song itself made sure of that. Blood on the Risers was not propaganda. It was honesty. In quiet moments after battles, when men gathered to drink, to mourn, or to remember, they sang it again. Sometimes with tears. Sometimes with laughter. Commanders knew its power. Some frowned at the lyrics, calling them inappropriate, morbid, but most understood. Better for men to sing than brood in silence. Better to face death with defiance than cower from it. Consequences of airborne warfare rippled beyond battlefields. Families at home received telegrams. Missing in action. Killed in action. Mothers asked how their sons died. Few were told of tangled risers, of broken bodies found in fields. The army wrote, "He died bravely in service of his country." Darker details remained among soldiers themselves, preserved in the song's verses. Psychologically, the impact was lasting. Many veterans admitted they could never hear Battle Hymn of the Republic again without thinking of the parody. The triumphant melody had been forever twisted, fused with memories of loss. One sergeant later confessed, "Whenever I hear glory, glory, hallelujah, I don't think of church. I see a boy's chute fail over Normandy." Yet even in this tragedy, the song left something powerful behind. It had become collective memory. It reminded every man that his fear was shared, that if the worst happened, he would not be forgotten, that his story, though sung with black humor, was part of the airborne's eternal legend. War's aftermath did not erase blood on the risers. If anything, it gave it permanence. Reunions of airborne veterans echoed with its verses. Memorial services sometimes ended with its chorus. A strange, haunting tribute. In training camps after the war, new generations of soldiers heard it and knew. This was the price. This was the truth. The song had outlived the war, but its shadow lingered, reminding all who sang it that courage and death were never far apart. The war ended, but blood on the risers did not. It survived, carried in veterans' memories, whispered in reunions, shouted in barracks by new recruits who had never seen Normandy or Arnhem. From Georgia fields to Korea's snows, from Vietnam's jungles to Iraq and Afghanistan's deserts. The song endured. It became more than parody. It became tradition, an anthem binding one generation of paratroopers to the next. Why? Because its truth was timeless. Every jump, no matter the year or war, carried the same risks. A chute might fail. A riser might snap. Death might come in an eye's blink. Every trooper knew it. By singing the song, they acknowledged that truth. They stripped death of its silence. They turned it into chorus, something to be faced together. In military academies, instructors sometimes frowned at its macabre imagery, but in airborne units, it remained sacred. Young men still learned it, verse by verse, just as their fathers or grandfathers had. The laughter in its lines was not disrespect. It was survival. Today, Blood on the Risers stands as one of the most enduring pieces of soldier folklore in American history. It is not carved into monuments. It is not printed in textbooks. Yet it lives. Carried on the voices of those willing to leap into sky. Its legacy is paradoxical. It is both a song of death and a song of courage, a reminder that even facing certain danger, men can choose defiance. They can choose to laugh, to sing, to make poetry from tragedy. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson of all. That war is not only fought with steel and fire, but with spirit. That sometimes the darkest humor can hold the brightest truth. In the end, Blood on the Risers is not about one rookie trooper or one failed jump. It is about all who dared step into the void. It is about airborne brotherhood. It is about the unshakable bond between fear and courage. Even now, when paratroopers gather and the chorus rises, it carries the same echo it did in 1944. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. A hymn not of despair, but of defiance. The eternal voice of those who jumped, knowing they might never land.